Thank you all for joining us today for Why Smart People Fail, What Winners Do That Others Don't. I'm Amy Goldstein, board member and chair of the training programs for the Legal Mentor Network, and also founder of Grace and Allen, a recruiting and career coaching firm for attorneys. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Legal Mentor Network is a nonprofit organization focused on providing free legal mentoring to law students and junior attorneys. And you can find information not only about the organization, but also about how to sign up as a mentor or mentee at our website, legalmentornetwork.org. Now, the terrain that you have to navigate in law firms is very similar to that in consulting and accounting firms. And we are thrilled to have Chris Simmons, former U.S. Partner Admissions Chair and Governing Board Member at PricewaterhouseCoopers and long-term advisor to AmLaw 200 firms, speaking with us today. Chris's Harvard MBA organizational behavior professor said he understood how to play the game in any work environment better than anyone she had ever taught. And his Amazon #1 bestseller, Nobody Told You, reveals many of the secrets of success from law to business to entrepreneurial pursuits. And while the book was written primarily to give women and minorities the inside scoop that now banned DEI meetings attempted to, the guru of leadership teaching, Stanford professor Jeffrey Pfeffer, says that these lessons apply to everyone seeking to advance their career. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A as we go along. Chris will take them where it fits. Otherwise, we'll leave some time at the end. And Chris, thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. I want to start by saying I hope that everybody feels as if we're having a relaxed chat. Imagine that I'm sitting in your living room and we're just talking. So let's start with a little story from my college graduation night at Harvard. And we had a dinner for some of the students, and my mother was sitting next to me at this dinner, and I pointed to somebody across the room, and I told my mother, I said, you'll be reading about that guy one day. And my mother said, oh, he must have the highest GPA. And I said, no, his grades are solid, but that's not why I'm pointing him out to you. I said, he grew up in a fairly modest background, no money, no fancy parental background, but he has crafted a personality. He has studied other people, and he has studied success, and he knows what success looks like, what it sounds like, what it speaks like, what it talks about. And he has crafted a persona that reflects all of that. And at this point, if you were to drop him in the castle with the Queen of England, she would think that he grew up in the castle with her. And if you dropped him in Harlem in the hood with the homies, he'd be in there, hey yo, at midnight, and they would think he grew up with them. I said, that's why he's going to be very successful. The person I was pointing to that night is a fellow named Ray McGuire. You can Google him. Ray McGuire retired from Citigroup as the global head of banking, and he's now in a very high position with Lazard Frères. And my point to you is you too can shape yourself to whoever you want to become, but you first need to accept the fact that you might need some shaping. For most attorneys and most people of high intellect, and I will share, I do have a Mensa certificate myself. So I'm not saying that smarts don't matter, but what I'm saying very clearly is that smarts are not enough. Being smart, as the educational world measures that, it's insufficient to your success. I will tell you that both in law firms and in business organizations, it's very seldom the Mensa certificate holders or the 98th percentile LSAT scores who end up being the managing partners or the heads of corporate departments or the $2 to $3 million a year lead performers. It's very seldom those people. Those people generally end up working for some of the people who have developed the skills that I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, I know a lot of you have heard the phrase, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, sorry, it's who you know. And that's partially true, but it's only about two-fifths true. So let's go down each step of it. I say this, it's not what you know, it's not who you know. Third step, it's not who knows you. Fourth step, it's not what do other people think about you. The real secret to success is how have you shaped what they think about you? If you just let yourself be known to people and you let them know you based on what they think they know, which is based on what they see and hear accidentally, you will always end up working for somebody who is a perception shaper. And that's why I've come up with the phrase that I hope you recall, which is that successful people practice strategic intentionality. They are strategically intentional about creating the moments that matter, and moments that matter shape how you're perceived. So, what perceptions should you be trying to shape? If you're working in a law firm, if you're working anywhere, if you have a boss, or if you have clients, even because clients are really your bosses at the end of the day, I'm going to rattle off 7 or 8 things that your moments should be trying to create as a perception. It should create the perception that you have a strong work ethic. Nobody entrusts their lives, their professional lives, to lazy people. It should demonstrate that you have a strong desire to be the top of your craft. If you communicate that you want to be average, you will attract average people. You should create moments that shape the perception that you have prowess, that you're loyal to your client and you're loyal to your bosses and to your firm. You should try to develop a sense of friendship with these constituencies. And you should also try to develop the perception that you are a master of your craft. So, for example, if you have an office where you're working, what should be visible in your office? I would say what should be visible in your office are materials that demonstrate you're going above and beyond to become a master of your craft. You should have the most articles on what you do. You should be reading what your bosses wrote 20 years ago and talk to them about it at lunch. Nobody's asked them about it in 20 years. They'll be happy you did. I'll give you what may seem like a ridiculous example, but uh, I will give you examples of things that I've seen and done that I know shaped how people perceive me and helped me stand out. You may reject some of them. You may say, oh, I'll never do that. That's crazy. That's fine. My goal isn't to have you do what I did. My goal is to get you to think differently about what you can do. Okay, so here's the first one that some of you are going to say, boy, he's crazy. That's right. On my first day of work at Price Waterhouse back in 1992, I came to the office with a big bed pillow under each office. I mean, under each arm. I had a pillow under each arm, a big bed pillow. And I walked the long way to my office to make sure that as many people as possible could see me with those bed pillows. And then I waited for the inevitable being people asking me why I had brought pillows to the office. And the answer I gave was, well, mergers and acquisitions business, which is what I was in. And I know many of you are in very intense businesses, intense areas of the law where you're working very late at night, multiple nights in a row. My message was, well, when I have to spend all night here at the office and I don't have the time to go home, I will have a comfortable place to lay my head while I'm sleeping on the floor. My supervising partner came down my office and asked me the question as to why I had the pillows. I gave that answer. He said, don't move a muscle, right here. He came back a few minutes later with the three most powerful people in the office, and he said, as he stuck out his chest, look at that guy I just hired. He's serious. You ever hired anybody that brought pillows on their first day? And right there, my reputation as a hard worker was set. Now, I could have gotten away with playing hooky some afternoons later because my reputation was set. And I probably did play hooky a few afternoons. I also slept in the office a few nights too. My point is, you got to do something that makes people see you differently. Maybe it's something you say. I'll give you an example of something you say. You might have more impact on your future with a 60-second soundbite in a conversation you have with someone. And that might have more impact on your career than 3 months of pretty hard work. I'll let you see how you rank this little conversation I had with the boss and time it. See how long did it take me to say this to this person? So I was scheduled to go on vacation with my wife, my best friend, and his wife. We were supposed to go to Brazil. But there was a transaction we were involved in the office that had stopped and started several times. And I knew it was a transaction of great significance to the revenue of our group. And I also knew it was a transaction of great significance to my track record in the firm. So I went back to the partner's office and I asked him very casually, his name was Jim. I said, hey, Jim, what are you going to do if that deal comes back alive while I'm in Brazil? Now, this is me implementing something I call the whiplash. The whiplash is where you start a conversation going in one direction with someone, and they think you are there for one purpose, but you're actually there for a different reason. And the different reason is something that makes you look like a superstar. And because you started in a different direction first, the superstar feeling is even enhanced. So Jim thought I was there to protect my vacation. He thought I was there to make sure that they wouldn't interrupt my Brazilian vacation with my wife, my best friend, and his wife. And so he said to me, somewhat predictably in my mind, oh, Chris, don't worry about it. We know you're the hardest working guy in the office. You've got the most billable hours. Um, we won't bother you. We'll figure it out while you're gone. And I said to him very directly, I didn't come back here to save my vacation. I came back here to save my deal and you. Because if any other associate in this office works on that transaction other than me, you're at risk, boss, because there's something the other associate will miss that I won't because I've been involved. About 2 weeks later, I went on vacation. Fortunately, the deal did not arise while I was gone. But when I got back, my boss told me, he welcomed me back by saying, I always knew I would find somebody who looked at work like I do. I think I finally found him. He said, that little speech you gave me about your vacation in Brazil makes you my number one horse. Now, I think a lot of you know, even in situations where firms have these assignment systems where supposedly you get rotated around different senior people figure out who their go-to person is. Little conversations like my Brazil conversation make you somebody's go-to horse. And that's who you want to be. And occasionally you might have to give up parts of a vacation. When I told my wife at the time that I had made that little speech to my boss, she said, why would you volunteer that? And my point that I hope all of you can understand and remember, and this is what I said to her, when your boss likes you can afford to go to Brazil once every few years. When your boss loves you can probably financially afford to go to Brazil every year. I was looking for the every year pass. So those are some ways that you can create a moment with the boss. Now, also recall this statement of mine: should don't matter. I'm going to say it again. I know you're a bunch of attorneys for the most part on this call today. You are steeped in good grammar training. Could say should doesn't matter, but I don't think you'll remember what I'm saying as clearly. So I'm purposefully breaking the grammatical rules and I'm saying should don't matter. Now, what am I talking about? What I mean is that most of us on this call have succeeded in life by doing what we were told we were supposed to do. We studied hard, we got good grades, we got good LSAT or GMAT scores, whatever test you had to take for your specific profession. We work hard, but we've been told one thing that I really want to make sure you leave understanding is not true. Those things do not guarantee your making partner. They don't guarantee you're making senior associate if you have that step in your firm. If you're working in a government office, it doesn't guarantee you getting promoted there either. If you're in a business, it doesn't guarantee a promotion there. People make decisions about who advances. People do not make decisions based on what's written on those sheets of paper they're given. They make decisions based on a mixture of factors. And I'll leave you with this thought related to that. Doing a great job gives people the justification to give you what you seek, that promotion, that raise, whatever. Having people like you gives them the motivation to want to give you what you seek. When you combine the justification and the motivation, your future success is almost guaranteed. If you only work on one piece of it, I can almost guarantee you future frustration. I'll give you an example of doing that with the client. I had the opportunity to hire attorneys and also fire attorneys. When I was the head of mergers and acquisitions and corporate development for Price Waterhouse in the US, and we did deals, I hired attorneys and I fired attorneys. I'll tell you a little story about an attorney who got himself fired. Whenever I would ask him his opinion about something, and I wanted his legal view, I began to realize that he had opinions about the business decisions that I was making, how I was going to negotiate, how I was going to try to force the other side into what I wanted to do. And I realized that some of his legal answers were influenced by what he thought I should be doing. And I finally had to tell him, should don't matter. I don't care about your opinion about what I should be doing. I want you to help me figure out how to do what I want to do, given the legal ramifications. Tell me how much risk each of my moves entails. But don't give me a slanted legal answer because it fits your business preference, because you're not here to help me decide what to do. You're here to help me figure out how to legally do what I want to do. That's one example of should don't matter. Oh, by the way, when that transaction was over, I saw to it that that particular attorney never worked with me again, which meant he did not work with my firm on M&A deals, which probably sure has some impacts on his future at that firm. It was a New York firm. That's all I'll say. I won't say the name. Um, I also know of situations where someone was asked a question in a meeting. They were a senior and associate at the time. Their partner was in the meeting. The partner did not want a certain answer stated. Unfortunately, the senior associate did not glance at the partner out the corner of their eye before they gave the answer. They did not realize that that was not the answer the partner wanted there to be given that day. Now, should it matter that they gave the right answer, but not the one the partner wanted them to state? No, it shouldn't, but let me tell you, it did. When that particular associate came up for partner, the partner was able to kill that candidacy with one phrase: Kevin doesn't know when to read the room. Knowing when to read the room matters a lot. When you're working for someone and they have more power than you do, part of your answer needs to be, what do you think they want me to say? And I'm not telling you to tell a mistruth, but I'm saying you might just shape your answer in a way that sticks to the truth, but doesn't trip the bomb wire that your boss doesn't want you to trip that day. Again, I know some of you will struggle with this. You'll say, well, I should just always give the right answer. Well, okay. And all I have to say about that is good luck with that. Let's focus a little bit more on the motivation part of what I talked about. How do you make somebody like you enough to want to see you succeed? Well, if it's a superior, there are three components to that. And I've come up with this three-piece mantra about that. Respect them, protect them, and project them. You respect them by never arguing with them in public. That's one way. You protect them by doing great work. And if you screw something up, you tell them early. Most people are pretty good at the respect part, at least at the basic level. And the protect part, that's usually what we high score performer types are good at. We're good at doing the work and protecting them. What I think many of you don't think enough about is, how do you project your own boss? Everybody likes public praise. I have a chapter in my book titled The Power of Public Praise. It's an important thing to do if you want to succeed and have people wake up at night figuring out how to make you look good and how to make you succeed. For example, you get interviewed in your college newspaper. You're 7 or 8 years out of college. They want to highlight a successful attorney now who graduated. You might mention that you're really enjoying working at XYZ firm because you're getting great training from partner Michael, whatever his name is, Michael Rose, your partner, Susan Glass, your partner. Eventually, somebody's going to show that partner that article that's mostly about you, but when they see that you gave them public praise for how they trained you, guess what? They're going to want to train you even more. One thing I learned a long time ago is people rise to the level you put them at in your life. I'll give you another example of how when you put somebody on a certain level in your life, they aspire to it. Remember earlier I talked about it's important to create or shape a moment where people feel like you have a friendship, not just a professional relationship. This is another reason smart people often fail. They make everything about being professional. They create no professional bond between themselves and their colleagues or their superiors. I'll give you a personal example of how I created a friendship moment with a superior. And it's actually ironic that I'm doing the call today because I'm in my childhood home in Memphis, Tennessee. My parents are both departed, but one of my siblings owns the house. And when we're in town, we can stay here. And so this story happened in this house that I grew up in as a child. I had a deal in Memphis, which was not common. And I was with a superior in Memphis. And he said to me while we were at the client site, "Hey, Chris, we're in your hometown. You pick where we're going to have dinner tonight. Make sure it's someplace good." And we were sitting in a very small conference room. So anything either of us says to anybody else, we could hear each other. And I use that for strategic intentionality to create a moment that matter. I picked up the phone and I called my mother and I said, Mom, I'm in town on a business deal. Sorry I didn't tell you ahead of time. I wasn't sure I'd have time to do anything with you guys. Uh, I'm in town with a friend and I want to bring him to dinner tonight. Cook your best meal. And I hung up the phone. And this superior of mine says, We're going to your mother's house for dinner. I said, Absolutely. Not only did we have dinner at my mother's house, when the meal was over and my superior suggested that it was time for him to go downtown to the Peabody Hotel, which is a fancy hotel in Memphis, my mother said, Oh, no, no, no. We're Southerners. We made your bed in the back. It would really make me feel good if you would sleep in our home tonight. My boss slept in my mother's back bedroom. It's really hard for somebody not to be nice to you at the office when they've spent the night in your mother's house and eaten your mother's food. So again, you may not feel comfortable doing something that dramatic, but all I'm telling you is think about something you can do to break down that wall of professionalism that so often exists. My statement about that, professionalism is overrated. You need to develop bonds with people because when you develop a bond with somebody, they might even overlook the mistake you make on that draft next week and they'll call you in their office and quietly tell you what you did wrong as opposed to putting it in your performance review. By the way, the person that I had that dinner with at my mother's house that night, later on when our office was shut down, that person invited me to go into business with him. Stayed friends with that person for many decades. That wasn't just because I did good work. It was because we had formed a partnership. A lot of times when I give these talks, people say to me, well, Chris, a lot of what you described fits a world where everybody's at the office all the time. You get to know each other. But I work in a place where it's a remote work and it's harder to create these relationships. And I say, no, it's not. It's actually easier to stand out because everybody else is remote as well. So if you have a strategy for dealing with that and everybody else does not, you will stand out. So here's my advice on that front. In most cases, the senior people go to the office some, and it's generally a pattern to what day they go in. I'm not telling you to be at the office every day. I'm urging you, though, to find out when the right people are there and make sure you're there on the days they're there. Another thing I urge you to do is this. Sometimes go in dressed casually like everybody else and maybe go to lunch with the senior people if you can swing that. But a good percentage of the time, I'd go a little bit more dressed up. And when they invite you to lunch, say something like, oh, I can't go to lunch today because I'm meeting with XYZ person who I think could be a future client of the firm. You're sending a message about who you are going to be in the future. You're not just a good worker bee. You are a future rainmaker. Letting people know that you're having those kinds of luncheons before you're required to shapes your perception. Because in most legal environments, you get graded in the first few years on how well you draft documents and do research. But eventually, it's the rainmakers who end up running the place. And unless you want to be a working partner your whole life, depending on whether somebody else who has relationships gives you work to do, it actually is wise to be developing those relationships with potential clients early in your career before you have to. And the other example I'll give you about that is a lot of times you might even get to the point where you're the second person on an account. You've got the partner who runs the account, runs the relationship, but you do a lot of the work, you know the people there. A complaint I often hear from people is, well, when the partner retired or when the partner moved on or whatever, they put somebody else on the account over me. And I say, yeah, that might be the firm doing that to you, but it also might be you letting it happen. And what I mean by that is this: if you're on that account a lot, you should be thinking about how you develop your own rapport with the customer, your own rapport with the number two, three, and four people at the client, so that if the partner does move on for some reason, your client tells your firm, we don't want that other person you want to move on to this account. We want Sarah. We're comfortable with Sarah. But you can't make that happen unless you're being strategic and intentional about the relationships you're creating while you have the opportunity to do so. So I often ask people this question: do you work a second job? Now, most white collar people will say, no, I don't work a second job. A lot of blue collar people work second jobs, right? We know people who work, one place at night and another place during the day. But normally, the type of people who would be on this type of a call get paid enough money on your job, fortunately for you, that you don't have to work a second job. Neither would you have time for a second job. But in fact, you do have a second job. Your second job is the job of your success, because you're not getting paid to think about how you become the client's go-to person. You're not getting paid to figure out how to make that partner down the hall who never talks to you talk to you. That's for you. You're getting paid to get that document out, go handle that negotiation, which means whenever you go to a meeting, for example, I never went to a meeting just thinking about the meeting topic. I always went to a meeting thinking about two things: the meeting topic, yes, but who's in the room today and where am I with them on our relationship journey? Where am I with them on how they perceive me? Because you will act differently in a meeting when you're always working that second job of your own personal success. And you'll do some things that require extra time and effort. For example, you might join a nonprofit board because the number two person at the account that you're trying to win is on that nonprofit board, and you need a reason for them to know you. Here's one other point I'll make, especially for some of you who work in larger firms. How many of you spend time with the sales and marketing people in your firm? They know the accounts that your firm has trouble getting traction in. Imagine what would happen to your perception in your firm if you were the person who opened the door into an account that you have historically not been able to get into. You may say, how can I do that? Well, think about all your life connections. Maybe it's a sorority sister, a fraternity brother, somebody you went to college with, somebody you went to high school with. Once you commit yourself to doing the unusual, to doing the shocking, to doing the unexpected, you will get better at coming up with the ideas. And I'll give you one example. I know some of you work in national firms. Like my firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, was a national firm. I decided, oh, one of the ways that I'm going to stand out, I'm going to get us a meeting in a city I don't live in, a city I don't work in. So I thought about all my life patterns and movements and realized that I had some friends in Chicago. And then I called up the sales and marketing people in Chicago. I was in Atlanta. And the sales and marketing people told me at my request 5 accounts that they could never get a meeting with. I realized that 2 of my friends worked in 2 of those accounts. I called up my friends and I said, look, do me a favor. Just get somebody in your company to agree to meet with my senior people. No requirement to buy anything, just as a favor to you. do a favor to me. I got those two meetings. The head of the Chicago office sent a letter, an email to the head of my office pointing out Chris Simmons, the only person not in my office who's ever gotten us a meeting. Once again, I'm standing out. Standing out is a decision you make. It's not something that you have an IQ point that God gave you that helps you figure out, a theorem of some type. You can decide to study this type of success, which is actually more important to your success than that high IQ score you might be so proud of. Now, I know some of you are saying, this just all seems like so much. I got to play the game. Yeah, you do. And the only thing I can say for those of you who reject thinking these ways, you'll probably end up reporting to some people who do. Sad to say that, but that's what I really think. You'll lose clients to them, you'll lose promotions to them, and you'll wake up in your 40s wondering why you haven't gotten to where you want to get to. This is why I titled this talk, Why Smart People Fail. If I look back at my undergraduate and MBA classmates, Harvard in both cases, it's not Harvard that made them successful. It was these ways of approaching life that made Harvard want them in the first place. That's why they have essays to figure out how you think, how you approach life, how you solve problems, how you approach people. If you train yourself to study how people make people like them, how people make people bring them in, how do you become chosen? And I'll make this last comment and we'll see if we have any questions in the queue. Actually, I'm going to check that right now. Oh, yeah, we have a question. Good. Oh, somebody made a comment. I love it. Uh, it's a sports analogy. Somebody mentioned that Larry Bird used the same mother technique to butter up Magic Johnson. Yes, he did. I heard about that too. Yeah, family matters. Oh, here's another example of using family since you gave that one. On another occasion, my mother was visiting me in Atlanta. I took my mother to the office and I introduced her to some people. When I introduced her to them, I said to them, I wanted my mother to meet the people that make me happy to work at Price Waterhouse. I know I know it sounds like such sucking up, but at least it's sophisticated sucking up. And again, a lot of the same things work with clients too. I did want to talk a little bit. I'll see if we get another question, but I want to talk a little bit too about how I think you can better use communications tools to make people feel close to you. So, for example, you have a meeting with a client, and the client sends you a message and says something like, I've gotten tied up and I will be 45 minutes late. You're probably going to respond and say, no problem, I'll be here. What I would say to that client is, I can only imagine how challenging it must be to handle all the things you have to handle in a day. No worries, I'll be here. You see the difference? I just gave them a piece of my respect, protect, project mantra because by reminding them that I know how significant their job is, I gave them respect. You get an email from somebody, internally or externally. Always find a reason to bring up a positive thing you think about them that shapes how you're responding to the thing in the moment. Or here's another one. You have departmental meetings in your group. When somebody in the group makes a comment, you could say in that meeting, "Oh, Karen, yeah, that's a great idea, Karen." And I would give that a B on the how you make people really like you. But suppose you make a note of Karen's comment in this week's meeting and you wait a couple of weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, some related issue comes up. And then you say, I'm still remembering that thing you said 2 weeks ago, Karen. I think it pertains to this thing that we're discussing here. It's really going to help us get to the right solution. Now, what feels more significant to somebody? You praising their comment in the moment? Are you recalling something they said 2 weeks prior and bringing it back up? Again, this is how you really differentiate yourself with somebody who you need to be your friend. Because, for example, Karen might be 1 or 2 years ahead of you, but Karen might already be a partner by the time you're up for partner. And so never underestimate the need to be in close relationship with people, not just the big shots, but the ones right above you. And this is something I see a lot of people make a mistake of doing, especially early in their legal careers. They feel a little bit as if they shouldn't have to do what the person 1 to 3 years ahead of them says. They're placing all their focus on the partner. But what you have to remember is that the partner is really busy, and he or she is too busy to focus that much time on you. The number one basis for his opinion of you is going to be what that person 1 to 3 or 4 years above you tells him or her about you. So be just as diligent in showing that person 1 to 3 years ahead of you respect. And I know that can be hard sometimes. You may not even think they're that smart. You may not think they're that good. And this takes me to another thing that people make the mistake of doing. Let's suppose you had a run-in with somebody. Let's suppose you had a moment where you didn't perform that well and they really reamed you out about it. And ever since then, you've been keeping your distance, or you've been actually maybe even showing your disdain for them. Don't do it. I really implore you, think through any past negative moment you've had with anyone, whether it be a colleague, a superior, or a client. Go back and clean that up. Apologize or say, I know what you're trying to teach me. I've done better with it. Here's the proof that I focused on it. You may not get them to be a supporter of yours. That's not always the goal of what I'm telling you. What smart people do is they reduce the number of people who want to take them down. So if you're at negative with somebody, at least move them to neutral. You may never move them to positive, but you might just do just enough so that in the meeting where you're going to be discussed, they say nothing. Sometimes you're winning if you can get somebody to forget something from the past or just decide, I'm just not going to bring it up. Do not hope that your supporters can drown them out, because promotions are very limited in every space, especially these days. You're not competing against a standard for getting advanced. You're competing against a standard first. And once you clear the standard, you're competing against other people who have supporters. So let's just imagine that you're one of the two finalists for that partner spot. And you've got 4 supporters, 4 neutrals, and 3 major naysayers. And your competitor has 2 supporters, 7 neutrals, and no naysayers. I don't think that's going to work out too well for you, especially if one of your naysayers is the wrong naysayer. So, really work hard to think about the past. And if you did not perform well with someone, or it's their opinion that you did not, or you had some kind of run in, go clean it up. Because when people get in these review meetings, and I can tell you I've been in a ton of them, senior people don't have to explain why they're saying no when your name comes up. That might be a topic for discussion over drinks later that night. But in the meeting, the respect that those people accord each other is supreme. And so you don't want to have a situation where you're vulnerable. Oh, great. We got some more. We got some more. Okay, this is interesting. An anonymous person just wrote in, I'm an in-house attorney, was just passed over for promotion in favor of an external hire. Great insight. And what I would say about that is a lot of what I'm saying to this person's really good point is it's it's protective. You never know what external thing may occur. And so a lot of what I'm talking about is to make it harder for somebody not to give the thing that you want to you. And think about it this way too. It's also relevant when cuts have to be made. You know, we live in a world where people get streamlined out. I can assure you, as someone who has sat in those meetings, you don't just go down the list and say who's best. You look at some names and you say, we're not touching Kevin. You want to be a we're not touching Kevin. You want to be the person who, because you've done everything I've said, you've done favors for people, you've publicly praised them, you've made them look good, that you'll be the person that somebody will say, he's off limits. That actually happened to me. I'm told that the year I came up for partner at Price Waterhouse, the economy was a little shaky. They had the list, and then they decided they were going to defer some people to the next year. And I'm told that the person with the list from HR went into a room of very, very senior people and said, well, HR is thinking we'll let these names wait a year. And somebody that I'd had a special moment with said, oh no, leave him on. Now, would I probably made it the next year? I guess, but by what I'm told, one person saved me. And you never know who that one person can be also. So I just encourage you, take a lesson from the person who so graciously gave me the example of his situation. You never know who can save you. It could be somebody in another department. That's another point I want to make, especially for some of you who work in law firms with multiple practice areas. You know something shocking you can do? If you're in litigation, know how to talk up the M&A guys, the corporate security guys, the labor and employment guys. Use your networks to get them a meeting with somebody. You'll probably be the first associate that's ever done that. Once you get yourself elevated like that, you know what may happen? Those partners in those other departments may start to send things to you. Maybe that's how you get your own clients and don't end up just being a working partner for other people. There's a lot of reciprocity in this world, but you have to kick it off. If you go around life thinking what should happen to you, what people should do for you, you won't initiate and ignite the actions that then generate reciprocal benefit for yourself. So I never worried about getting immediate feedback or payback from things I did or said. I just did them knowing that in most cases, it comes back to you eventually. And a lot of times you may never know it came back to you because sometimes people champion you behind closed doors who never tell you they did it. I don't know why some people don't want you to know for whatever reason, but I do know of situations like that. I mean, there's some things I've done for people I haven't told them about because I want them to feel like they earned it 100% on their own. And you want to be the person who's got so many possibilities out there of what could be going on positive for you, can't even keep track of it all. And there was one other comment. Um, somebody wrote, this is kind of funny. Somebody wrote, motherly charm goes places. Yeah, it surely does. And also being, again, strategic. Like I said, going into the office today, certain people are going to be there. Not always going to lunch with them because sometimes you're too busy because you're doing what? You're off to meet a prospect. You're off to meet a potential client. And if you've got extra credentials that people should know about, and I will say this, as a black man, there's some unique issues that minorities have to face. I knew I had to deal with the possibility that people thought I wasn't as smart as somebody else there. Uh, that's why at age 30 something, I went and finally got my Mensa plaque, uh, my Mensa certificate, and had it framed, and I put it on the wall in my office just so they knew. Uh, if you're in a demographic category that causes people to question you, figure out what you can do to do what I call flip the bias. If you're a woman and you're in a situation where you think people may not assume that you can handle the tough negotiation that needs to be done, um, do some things that show that you're tough sometimes. I knew an Asian woman who turns out in her private life was a Taekwondo martial arts expert. I said, why don't you invite your colleagues to see you perform your martial arts? Nobody's going to think you're not tough after that. So just think about what you can do. I'm not heavily encouraging this one, but I will say, um, if you were a group of people who swear a lot, you might want to swear a little bit sometimes because people make assumptions about what you can do with clients by what they see you do with them. And I will say, there's a woman, Carla Harris. You can look up her books. She's got a bunch of books. Expect to Win is one of her prime books. She's a very senior person at Morgan Stanley. She talks about the fact that when she had proven her technical prowess, her sponsor called her in and said, "Look, Carla, everybody knows you're brilliant, but we're not sure you're tough enough." She said all she started doing was at every meeting she went to, she'd make the same point she normally would. And then she'd say, "And we got to get that right because I'm tough." And she said after about the 10th time she had said, "I'm tough" in the meeting, somebody else said, "Oh, we got to get this right because Carla's tough." Again, what stories do you tell about yourself? There's a reason I tell that Brazil story about myself. There's a reason I tell the story about bringing the pillows to the office. There's a reason I tell people I read 3 entire sets of encyclopedias when I was 11 years old. What are your stories that you're not telling? And I want to mention one last thing. We've got about 2 minutes left, I think. Authenticity at work. It's important to bring the strategically relevant, authentic self of your part to work. Now, I got some parts of myself to work that I might leave at home. But for example, if you're Irish and there's something uniquely Irish about your background, invite some people to do something uniquely Irish. I've taken people to Black church. They're curious about it. I've taken them to Black nightclubs. They're curious about it. That's how I break through the professional wall, by letting them see something uniquely me. And when you hear some of your superiors mention something in passing, volunteer to do it with them. So, for example, if some boss says his son is in the rugby match, you could say, "Rugby? I've never been to a rugby match. One of those, hell, would you mind if I came to one with you? Very few bosses are going to tell you no. And some of them might think you're sucking up, but so be it. It's better to make that effort to do something that they care about. And most people care a lot about whatever their children are doing. I knew some people in my old office in Price Waterhouse. I had a son who was a big football star. One guy kept coming to all the football games with me. It probably helped him. I won't go into detail on how, but it probably helped him. Those are the realities of the real world. And ignoring those, that's why smart people often fail. You got to read the room and you got to pay attention to the motivation, not just the justification. I think we're out of time.
Chris, there was one more comment and question. I can read it to you. Great
Okay.
insights, Chris. Do you have any thoughts on how we can be more strategic about which people we should be trying to impress or become closer to, aside from the obvious, such as bosses and people like that?
Sure. Actually, it's funny. I actually had a note written about that very thing. The bigger your network where you work, the more things you'll hear. Also, when you're in meetings with senior people, not just the one you're directly working for, but others, pay attention to body language in those meetings. Pay attention to who seems to side with whom. Over time, you'll start to either figure out or be told, because you've got enough network in the office, who the real players are. And that's an important thing to know, because I'll tell you this, after I retired from Price Waterhouse, a managing partner of one of the offices asked me to mentor one of their people and coach them. The first thing I asked the person I was coaching, they were very close to making partner, or so they thought. I said, "Who's your sponsor? Like, who's the boss that you think is going to get you in?" And when as soon as he said the name, I knew, nope, that's the wrong horse. In fact, that person's not respected. So we had to come up with a whole coaching plan as to how to get him other sponsors in the office, because actually what he needed to do was distance himself from the one he had been connected to. So yes, it's a great question. It's not just the formal chain, it's the informal chain of who really has influence in the office. And if you make enough friends, they'll either tell you or you can figure it out. You can see it. Most people don't pay attention to this at all. So you're already a step ahead to think about it.
That is a great note to end on. There were so many amazing, actionable tips. Chris, thank you for your time and sharing all of this terrific information. And thank everybody who joined us today. We are recording, and the recording will be available on the
And
Legal
Amy, let me
Network.
make just one last offer to your audience. We're
Please.
friends now too. I'm Chris Simmons, MBA on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me and you have a specific question that you didn't want to get around to today or anything in the future, I respond to messages.
That's very generous, Chris. Thank you so much for that as well. And so this recording will be, as I was saying, on our YouTube channel and also on our Substack. So you can go back over if you missed anything. I'm sure there were lots of notes being taken. And just thank you again for your time, Chris, and everyone in the audience. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Amy.